This is Write Them and Solve Them 2.0. Here's the warm up. Jamal volunteers to hand out sandwiches to people who are hungry in his community. He raises $85 and is trying to figure out how many sandwiches he can purchase for $6.25 each. He writes the inequality 6.25x is less than or equal to 85. Then he solves the inequality and gets x is less than or equal to 13.6. Select all the statements that are true about this situation. There's only actually one answer, and that is going to be 12 sandwiches. You can't have 13.6 sandwiches, just can't do that in reality. You can't order 9.5 sandwiches, although some people will say, well, you could order half a sandwich and soup sometimes. Okay, but not likely. You can't be like one half a sandwich. You can't order negative sandwiches, and you can't do 14 because 14 is greater than the 13.6. Next slide. Keandra wants to surprise some friends before school with orange juice and donuts. At the store, the orange juice costs $2.85 and donuts cost $1.15. There's no sales tax. The store has a $15 purchase minimum for credit cards. Keandra used her credit card to pay. How many friends might you have bought treats for? So when we think about this, we're buying orange juice and we're buying a donut for each person. So we actually have to combine these together. So if you did $2.85 plus $1.15, you would end up with $4. And that means for each person, there's going to be $4 spent, and X is the number of people. Now it says here that the purchase has to be a minimum of $15, meaning that this 4x has to be greater than or equal to 15, meaning that it can be $15 or it can be greater than that. And I get my thumbs up on that one for being correct. Now we need to solve it. That's 4x is greater than or equal to 15. We're going to divide both sides by 4. That's going to leave us with x is greater than or equal to 15 divided by 4 is 3.75. If x is greater than or equal to 3.75, we submit, we get a thumbs up. And now it asks us to explain what this inequality means. It means that she needs to buy OJ and donuts for four or more friends. Now I know it says 3.75, but we can't have 0.375 friends, so I just rounded up to 4, and it's 4 or more friends. So that's how that works. Next, we're going to write inequality for this here. It says school marching band has a budget of $750. The band has $3 in competition fees, and they need 15 more uniforms. How much could the marching band spend on each uniform? So if we think of it as an equation, we know that our equation is going to be equal to 750. And then that's their budget. So what are they spending that 750 on? Well, there's the $300, so that's plus 300. And then there's the 15x, which is the number of uniforms times how many people there are plus the 300. And now that's 750. But we don't want an equation. We want a inequality. So we know their budget is 750, which means it has to be less than 750. What they're going to spend has to be less than 750, but it can be equal to. So we end up with 15x plus 300 is less than or equal to 750. Thumbs up. So now we're going to solve. So we have 15x plus 300 is less than or equal to 750. Going to subtract 300 from each side. That leaves us with 15x is less than or equal to 450. And I'm going to divide both sides by 15. That's going to leave me with x is less than or equal to 30. Submit. And then what does this mean? It means each uniform needs to cost $30 or less. And that one's done. Next, we have LaShawn is a farmer in a city and needs to cover their plants when the temperature gets to 0 degrees Celsius or below. At noon, the temperature was 5 degrees Celsius and dropped a steady rate of 0.8 degrees per hour. When do LaShawn's plants need to be covered? So again, think of this like an equation. Drop means that we're subtracting. So we're starting at 5 and we're taking away 0.8x. Because you're taking away 0.8 degrees and x is the number of hours. And that would be equal to 0. But again, we don't want inequality because it says here, we don't want equation, we want equality because it says here when the temperature gets to 0 degrees or less. So we want this number to be less than or equal to 0 degrees, meaning that this side can be below or equal to 0 degrees because then we know we need to cover it. And we get a thumbs up on that one. So now we need to solve that. We have 5 minus 0.8x is less than or equal to 0. We're going to subtract 5 from both sides. That's going to leave me with negative 0.8x is less than or equal to negative 5. And that's negative because if we really think about this, is plus negative. So when I took this away, I still have a negative there. And divide both sides by negative 0.8. And I'm going to get 5 divided by 0.8. And I can do it like that because I know this is going to be positive anyway. So it's like it doesn't matter. That leaves me with 6.25 on this side. It leaves me with x on this side because all of that cancels out except for the x. And then this gets flipped because we divided by a negative. So our answer should be, or our solution should be, x is greater than or equal to 6.25. So what does this mean? It means that in 6.25 hours or more, the temperature will be below 0 or more, and the plants need to be covered. Let's go to our next one. Rudra is taking himself and his three friends out to dinner. He has a coupon for $5 off each meal. If Rudra has $65, how much can each person spend? So again, if we think about it as an equation, well, there's three friends and Rudra, so that's 4, and we're going to do x minus 5. And the reason why I'm doing x minus 5 in parentheses is because we have to take away x, or 5 rather, from x, where x is each meal, and you're taking 5 away from each meal, and you're doing that 4 times. And then that would be equal to 65. But again, this is an inequality, so we don't want equals. Instead, we want to say, well, what can happen? Well, 65 is the limit. That's the most that it could be, meaning that this has to be less than or equal to 65. The money spent on the meal has to be less than or equal to 65. We can spend 65, we can spend below 65, but we can't spend more than 65. Submit, and we get thumbs up. Now we're going to solve. So we have 4 parentheses x minus 5 is less than or equal to 65. You could solve this by dividing, or you can solve, by distributing, or you could solve by dividing first. It's your choice. I'm going to distribute, so I'm going to go here and here, multiply each of those pieces by 4, give me 4x minus 20 is less than or equal to 65. I'm going to add 20 to both sides, give me 4x is less than or equal to 85. I'm going to divide both sides by 4, leave me with x. This doesn't change because we didn't divide by a negative. So we have 85 divided by 4 is 21.25. X is greater than or equal to 21.25. And what does this mean? It means each meal needs to cost $21.25 or less. So Adriana's apartment building has a washing machine that uses a card for payment. The card automatically reloads when the balance goes below $15. If her family's card balance is currently $63.80 and a load of laundry costs $1.60, how many loads of laundry can Adriana's family do before the card reloads? So if we think this is an equation, we're starting off with $63.80 and we're taking away $1.60 for every load. So we have to do 1.6 times x, where x is the amount of loads of laundry you're going to do. And that's going to be equal to 15, because 15 is this ending point that they've given us. But again, it's an inequality. And it says here that the card automatically reloads when the balance goes below 15. It says, how many loads can Adriana's family do before the card reloads? So essentially, you would think it would be less than or equal to, because you'd say, oh, well, they can't go below, or it'll trigger once it goes below, or even just less than. But in actuality, it's going to be greater than or equal to. And the reason why it's greater than or equal to is because you try to find this point where this side stays above 15. We're saying, well, how low can we go before we get there? So this 15 is sort of like our high end, and we need to stay here. But we also saying like the high end of before we trigger. So then in actuality, it's the low end. So it seems strange, but it's the wording that gives it away. It needs to fall below $15. So $15 is okay. It won't trigger before it reloads, meaning that how many washes can they do before that triggers it? And that's going to be correct. So now we have to solve that inequality. And we have 6380, which I'm just going to put as 0.8, minus 1.6x is greater than or equal to 15. So I'm going to subtract 63.8 from both sides. I'm going to jump to my calculator and subtract like that, and we get negative 48.8. And that symbol stays the same. That's going to be negative. We just end up like that. Now we're going to divide both sides by negative 1.6. That's going to leave us with x on this side. Over here, I'm going to do 4.8 divided by 1.6. Again, I can just do it as positives because these are negatives, which means our h is going to be positive. So it's like, it doesn't matter. That's going to leave us with 30.5. But remember, we divided by a negative. If we divide or multiply by a negative when we solve, we have to flip the sign. And our answer is going to be x is greater than or equal to 30.5. And we hit submit, and we get a thumbs up. So what does this mean? They can't do 31 because that would be too many. So it is 30 loads or less before, or rather, without having to recharge the card. All right, so let's look at our synthesis here. It says Sahana gets $9.50 per hour at her job at the pet store. She needs to make at least $235 each week in order to pay her bills. Describe how to write an inequality that represents this situation. So we know that $9.50 is the money per hour. We know X is the number of hours. To work. And she wants at least $235, which means $235 or more of earnings. So that allows us to build our equation. We know we're going to multiply 950 times x because that would be multiplication to figure out how much she earns. We know that that number has to be greater than or equal to, because 235 is okay, 235. And that should be it. All right, I'm not going to do the cooldown because you should be doing that so I can check your understanding. And that'll end this lesson.